Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Makers Experts Cafe. I'm your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me I have an amazing human being, Miss Katherine Winter Celery. Did I say that
You
correctly?
did. You did great.
Awesome. Katherine, I love how you show up in the community and I love what you do. Can you tell our audience members a little bit more about what you do and how you got involved doing it?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I have a conscious parenting revolution, and I got involved. Really, my background is diverse, but you could say fundamentally, I come out of a mediation background, conflict resolution, nonviolent communication, and VC restorative justice. Like that's my wheelhouse.
Awesome.
And it really became that in parenting because I started having my own kids. And I also had my own family of origin. And when I was navigating parenting and also being a kid it all came together. And I realized that, whoa, I don't know if I'm going to be the parent I want to be unless I up level. And in my own up leveling, I just became enamored with the entire conversation. And then really have done it for 25 years. It's become sort of my life's work. And I love the fact that I help families that I guess maybe my sweet spot is families in breakdown, where I just got off a call with a client whose two, mid-20s kids won't talk to her right now. I have another client who has a lot of children and some of them aren't talking to her either. And a lot of it is about, gosh, if I look back on how I parented, I made so many mistakes. I feel so bad and I feel like I've been fired. And how do I get rehired? And I'm like, well, you can. And, but these are the ways that you have to go about doing it. So that's a big part of my practice is helping people navigate through, breakdowns. And then the other side is like, I'd like to get people before they break, the family system before it gets injured, the one that you're creating with your little kids, with just some great, foundational material, you can kind of just leapfrog past that whole thing. And that's another passion is to just help people not do all those things that are going to break down the relationship.
Katherine, I love how you addressed it because ever since you find out that you're pregnant to the point where the kids are leaving the home, it's always a timing issue. There's a certain period of time where they have these developmental milestones and the process just continues. It's like when you go into high school, then you got to achieve certain milestones there so that you'll be able to get into college. And if you try to move during senior year on stuff that you should have done your freshman year, it becomes an issue, right? So it's constantly now that the kids have left home and you want to communicate with them some of the stuff that you're describing. So I love the fact that you're saying that there is hope.
Oh, yeah.
If you got it wrong, you can still go back and fix and address it. But at the same time, you're talking to the right audience here. All the people who tune in are proactive parents. So they're trying to invest the time and the attention and the resources necessary now so that work and life can be easier down the road, basically.
Yeah, that's the best case scenario is not to have to have forgotten about, oh, I could have done it better or I could have done it differently. Or it's like, yeah, of course you could have. I mean, that goes on forever and we can't blame ourselves for what we don't know. And I just think blame in and of itself is very ineffective. And I just literally got done talking with this mom about how, can we just shift out of it's my fault language? Can we move into it's no one's fault and then mistakes happened? And, maybe that's a whole nother way of looking at it, right? Rumi, right? There's a field over there beyond right doing and wrongdoing. And I'll meet you over there. And that's where I think we all get to go because we've all made mistakes. And if we keep it in the paradigm of it's my fault and I blame myself, or it's your fault and I blame you, we can't get anywhere. It's just, it's a terrible conversation.
I do a lot of stuff with United Nations. You talked about remediation, and what you just mentioned is such a key pattern that happens in our minds that when we're doing the blame and judgment, we're actually operating from the past and what has happened. And that prevents us from moving into the future that we want to create, right? And it actually alters our future to reflect what our past looked like in the first place. So it perpetuates the problem. So I love that you do nonviolent communication. I love that, you're focused on let's figure out what we need to do so we can go to where we want to go, not where we've been, basically.
Yeah. I had another client yesterday with her 8-year-old son. And they'd had a breakdown that morning getting ready for school. And I think all of us can relate to those getting out of the house breakdowns. But it started with that. And within, I'd say 10 seconds, we'd moved to something that happened in kindergarten. So he'd been holding on to this. He was only 7 or 8. And he'd been holding on to this for already 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So I thought, oh, bless his little heart. And it always, my experience is that it gets down to the point of nobody saw me from my perspective deeply and understood my side. And a lot of adults end up in a split second on the playground. In this case, it was on the playground, deciding you're the one that's wrong. You go to, and he actually was sent to the naughty chair.
Wow.
Public humiliation for something that was misunderstood from the first place. And he also has this whole thing about girls get treated better than boys. Because, you know, and I laughed inside because I thought, well, at that age, girls are usually more verbal, right? Their frontal lobes are more developed. They can spin a better yarn. I mean, and he was on the short end of the stick a number of times. And just like from kindergarten to now, he had built up this self-concept that people don't understand me.
No.
And I get in trouble for things I didn't do. And I hate school.
And I really want that point is really important, how this past continues to shape, like some of the stuff that the conflicts that we're seeing in the world right now amongst countries literally whittles down to what happened in the past. Now that's a country, but you can take it to a community, to a government, to a family, to a person, and it's just affecting everything, cascading.
You and I are so simpatico. Exactly. That's exactly right. One of my TED Talks that I did is on the rebellion is here. We created it and we can solve it. And I'm talking about school shootings. And I'm using some very specific examples of someone who was completely misunderstood. And they're so upset about it. They're so hurt about it that they walk into the school with a gun.
Right.
And the example I used, I believe it was in Oregon. And there was a coach who knew this boy. And he went in and just gave him a hug. He seriously walked past all of it and he went in and he gave him a hug and the kid collapsed in his arms.
Wow.
And in that one case, I feel like the underlying unmet need to be seen, heard, and understood from his perspective was met with that heroic counselor. And, it changed that boy's life.
So
and the school.
Let's focus on that because that's the big challenge right now, right? The underlying need. And I'm assuming that when people are coming to you, it's because that need is not being met. What is that challenge? What do you typically see as the underlying need that has created?
Yeah. So, you know, I mean, we're all familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then in my material, I've created a program called the Guidance Approach to Programming. And with a couple of other people, we created our whole 90-day parenting reset. And we talk a lot about, I mean, obviously psychological safety and security when we're talking in the context of kids, but really not. I mean, it's always going to come down to psychological safety and security so much of the time. And do I feel safe enough in this environment that I can be me? A lot of times, no. I've had another family where this little boy's in trouble all the time. And he's finally gotten to the point he's like, I don't even know how to be anymore. Because no matter what I do, he's ADHD, gets up, gets down, hops around, whatever. It's pissing somebody off. Right. And they want him to behave and they're going to give him a reward at the end of the day if he does. And they're going to give him a punishment if he doesn't. Right. And so we all know that rewards and punishments are, you know, two sides to the very same coin of manipulation. And that there's no way for me not to feel like at one point or another, I'm going to disappoint you and I'm going to get that helpful reward removed. And that's going to create my resentment flow. So underlying unmet needs, you know, I guess we could say the ones for, you know, food, air, water, and sleep. Hopefully that's met. But we also know that there's a lot of food insecurity and not just in third world countries, in this country, right? The land of milk and honey. There's a lot of food insecurity. And how can I be in my emotional body in an evolved state if I'm hungry? So, I mean, we can talk about just those very basic needs that need to be met. But then I think it really does move to psychological safety and belonging. And do I feel like I belong here?
And I want to mention this before we go to the psychological part. So when we talk about food, I want the parents to also know that just because you put something in your mouth doesn't mean that your nutritional needs are met.
True.
And for a developing body, for a developing brain, those things are essential for that child to be able to operate or perform. Any
Yeah.
athlete knows this.
Absolutely.
And kids are all super athletes as far as I'm concerned. So we
Yeah.
got,
And not only that, I mean, sleep.
yep.
And, I can't emphasize enough when children's sleep is interrupted, anyone's sleep is interrupted, their ability to regulate their emotions is compromised. Their ability to actually show up in that classroom and be able to focus and study. So my personal story was with our daughter who had multiple ear infections.
Mhm.
And I was in a specialist's office for another ear infection one day, and he had signs all over the place on sleep apnea.
Mhm.
And I didn't know much about it then. I know a lot about it now. And I said to him, I was reading your sign on sleep apnea. I think maybe my daughter has that. And long story short, she did. And he said, does she have ADHD or has anybody diagnosed her with that? And I said, no, but why do you ask? Because I've seen this frenetic energy. And he said, because if you have sleep apnea, your REM cycle is so disrupted that you actually present like you have ADHD. I was like, oh my God. And so that's for everyone out there who has kids with disrupted sleep or their circadian rhythms are, affected. It can show up in all kinds of things that could later be diagnosed as ADHD.
I
It's a
actually
problem.
I actually had a conversation with my son last night because he was up at 11 o'clock at night, and it was because he had an assignment that was due by midnight.
Mm.
And I'm like, nah. And the assignment was given to him
3
during the
weeks ago.
no, it was I wish the assignment was given to him during the day. And I was like, well, if this is going to affect your sleep tonight, then even if you get a good grade on this, tomorrow you have 7 other periods. And how are you going to perform in all of those other periods?
Totally. Yeah.
Like, let's prioritize your health, your sleep. It's got to come first. You can
Good
always
for
talk
you.
about it.
Good for you, Dad. Yay. You gave him permission to take care of himself.
Right. So, and how many times we don't do that ourselves, Let's
Yeah.
sacrifice ourselves. Let's come second
Yeah.
to other people's needs, right?
Yeah.
And that goes back. Let's go to psychological stuff
Well,
now.
no. And I mean, that's one of my favorite topics is that when we use obedience and compliance as our parenting modality,
Right.
children who have a feeling that's arising around a demand don't know how to express themselves. And if they have the gumption to say something, then they're told they're being disobedient or they're talking back and that they need to go to their room and that they're supposed to just do as they're told. And I know this is an old paradigm, but it's a shockingly popular one today, all over the world, not just in, what I want to call like China, Korea, Japan, where it's very filial piety oriented. And I used to train there. I mean, I was in Asia for 33 years. So 25 years of my trainings have been there.
Right.
And Asian communities would say to me, well, this is, you don't understand. You don't understand. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's not that different in America.
Yeah.
The do as you're told model is very popular. And what it does is I call children the great last marginalized community, that children are people too. Their feelings and needs matter. And that, yes, of course, they're, emotionally at a different place, but their feelings and needs and their ability to regulate their feelings and be with whatever's arising is just as important it is to you and me.
Absolutely.
But when they are out of control of their feelings, they're made to be wrong or bad, as opposed to developmentally right on tune.
Totally. Catherine, I know we are going to run out of time, so I want to make sure that our parents who are listening to this have something that I can implement. What would be the one thing that you would suggest for implementation for families?
So I think a really easy one is 2 things, actually. One, see your children beautiful. So when they're falling apart and all you can think of is like negative things to say about or feel, to just take a minute to go, how can I see you beautiful? And that can usually shift us into, this is the tragic expression of their unmet needs. Tragic expression of their unmet needs. Nevertheless, it's coming from a needs-based perspective of they just can't figure out how to meet their needs and they're falling apart. And it's socially unacceptable, of course. Yes, we all know that. We'd like it not to be there, of course, naturally. And if we can see them beautiful, then we can create connection. Because we can see past all the behaviors and we can just go straight to their little hearts and be like, this is really hard for you. You're having a tough time.
I actually just spoke to another expert that just talked about parents, and the first most important thing is vision. And what you just said with the word seeing the beautiful you.
Yeah.
You just got to create that vision for yourself.
Yes. And, you know, Marshall Rosenberg was one of my teachers, and he is the founder of restorative justice in the American prison system. And of course, the leader in NVC. And Marshall changed my life when he says, how you hear me is up to you. And I was like, wow, I choose how I hear you. I choose how I hear you. I choose how I hear you. That just like, that was a revelationary step for me, that I can hear also and choose how I hear, not just how I see, but how I hear. So that would be probably enough to get anybody through the day.
But guys, I think this is going really fast. You all got to come back and like watch the replay of this a second.
Yeah. There's so many wonderful things that we've gotten to touch on.
Yeah,
Lessons that have taken maybe to really integrate. And that's, of course, the big piece. Intellectually, we can know something, but when it starts to change my instant response, then we know we've integrated it.
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely.
Now we know we've really changed our own paradigm.
Beautiful. Very cool. Katherine, how can people connect with you? Because I know there is so many more gems there.
Yeah. So the easiest way would be to go to freeparentingbook.com, and you can download my Amazon bestseller, 7 Strategies to Keep Your Relationship with Your Kids from Hitting the Boiling Point. And I also have a little video there that goes into a lot of depth around this whole thing of resentment flows that are created through demand language. And being able to see children beautiful is being able to see them as humans that are trying to meet their needs rather than badly behave that requires punishment in order to get them to do the right thing.
Right. It's always best to see the person as they are instead of trying to manipulate them into something.
Oh God, yeah.
Right. So
yeah. It's so nice to talk with you.
Likewise. All right, guys. Katherine is highly accomplished. She's been doing this for a while. So she's given me so many links. I want to make sure that you guys go to the description box and check all the information that she has put there for you guys. Lots of resources, connect, and basically become part of a community. Don't forget, we are also role modeling the behavior for our children, that it's okay not to have all the answers, that there are good people on this planet that want our best interest, want to make the world a better place, and it's okay to ask for help. Our kids need to know that, and they need to know where to go for the right kind of information, because that's the other part. There's information overload, and you want to make sure you prioritize and you focus on the ones that carry you forward and where you want to go. So if you haven't already done so, please hit subscribe on the channel so that you get notified of all the experts, the gift, and the expertise that they bring to the channel. And definitely, once again, make sure you connect with Katherine through all the links that she has generously provided for you guys. Katherine, this was fascinating. Any final words for our audience members before we finish today?
Well, I would just say that I hope you connect, and that you see your children beautiful, even when it's hard. And the follow through to that is to see yourself beautiful too.
Yes. Well said. All right. Until next time. Thank you, guys. Cheers.
Thank you.